Imagine yourself lying in bed, the weight of the day slowly melting away as your mind begins to drift. Tonight, we're setting sail into the grimy, chaotic, and absolutely miserable world of historical pirates. And, fair warning, you probably won't survive this. You might be picturing wild adventures, glittering treasure chests, and a talking parrot on your shoulder. But the truth? It's darker, smellier, and filled with more screaming than you signed up for. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world people are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Let your breathing slow, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a mistake, or bad luck, or maybe just being in the wrong place when the wrong ship docks. You're probably a sailor already, working merchant routes or hauling cargo through the Caribbean. Life isn't good, but at least you've got a rhythm. But then a shadow appears on the horizon, a black flag, or maybe just a ship that looks like it's barely holding together but still moves like it's possessed. You don't get a chance to panic before cannon fire slams into your hull. Splinters fly like razors, your captain's screaming, and then they board. Pirates aren't gentle, they scream curses, wave rusty cutlasses, and fire pistols that smell like burning metal and gunpowder. You don't fight back. Most don't. You drop your knife, raise your hands, and hope maybe they'll let you live. Maybe you'll get lucky. But lucky means something different out here. The luckiest get press ganged, dragged onto the pirate ship, shoved below decks, and told your crew, now, say goodbye to your old life. You've just been forcibly recruited into one of the most brutal jobs on Earth. They strip you of your clothes. Those belong to the pirates now. You're handed a crusty shirt, some pants that barely fit, and a pair of boots that squish when you walk. You're now part of the crew, which mostly means scrubbing decks, taking orders, and never questioning the guy with the biggest hat. Some men beg to join, hoping for gold and freedom. You didn't get that choice. You're still shaking from the attack when someone smacks you on the back and calls you green meat. It's not a compliment. Your first night aboard is miserable. The ship rocks endlessly, like it's trying to fling you into the sea. You sleep on a damp board in a room that smells like moldy bread and sweat. Someone near you is snoring so loud you think they might be dying. You're hungry, but you can't find the kitchen because there isn't one. Just a guy called Cookie who boils random animal bits into something that smells like defeat. You're starting to realize this isn't an adventure. It's a trap. Historically, many pirates were forced into service this way, pressed into piracy after their ship was taken. A famous example is Captain Kidd's crew, many of whom claimed they were forced to join. Once aboard, refusing to participate wasn't much of an option. Saying no often meant being tossed overboard, or worse, and there was no polite resignation letter. The pirate life was for life, or until something sharper ended it. The pirate ship has its own rules. Of course, once you're officially in, you're expected to pull your weight, or else there's no room for slackers or complainers. That one guy who moans too much, he's tied to the mast and whipped until his back looks like lasagna. You keep your mouth shut and your head down. You learn fast or you suffer. And then there's the weird part. Despite the violence and chaos, pirate crews had a twisted sense of fairness. There was something called the Articles of Agreement, a kind of pirate constitution. Everyone got a share of plunder. Decisions were often made democratically. The captain could be voted out. It's like the worst job ever, combined with bizarre workplace equity. Except your co-workers smell like dead fish and solve disputes with daggers. But don't get too hopeful. That share they promised you? It comes with a catch. You don't get anything until the next successful raid. And no one's promising when that will be. For now, you're just a body helping the ship limp through hostile waters. And trust me, those waters are full of things that want to kill you. Hurricanes, naval ships, other pirates. Even your own ship seems determined to fall apart beneath your feet. There's a saying aboard, the sea takes what it wants. The guy who teaches it to you is missing 2 fingers and has a tooth that whistles when he talks. You ask what happened to his fingers. Bad captain, he says, and leaves it at that. Not everything about pirate recruitment is completely agreed upon. Historians still debate just how common press ganging was. Some believe most pirates joined voluntarily, driven by desperation or enticed by the promise of freedom and loot. Others argue it was more often coercion, especially in the golden age of piracy, when men had fewer options and navies treated their crews like livestock. But in your case, voluntary it was not. You spend your days mopping, climbing, hauling ropes, and pretending you're not crying. You're hungry all the time. Someone coughs blood near your hammock. The ship rocks endlessly, and you start to dream of dry land. Not even a beach, just solid ground that doesn't sway like a drunk man. You catch yourself staring at the horizon, wondering what would happen if you just jumped. It's a dangerous thought, but it won't be your last. Because this is just the beginning. You're officially a pirate now, and if you think it's going to get better from here, oh, you sweet, naive little landlubber, there's a moment, maybe a few days in, where it finally hits you. You're never going home. Not really. Not to your town, your family, your bed with an actual mattress. That's gone. Whatever vague notion of escape you had is evaporating fast. You're miles from any coast, surrounded by criminals, and living in a drifting coffin. The pirate ship is your new universe now, and everything you once knew is as distant as the moon. The thing is, you hadn't realized just how attached you were to land. You miss the weirdest stuff, like walking in a straight line. Grass, birds that don't screech, the taste of fresh bread, even the sound of distant church bells. The sort of thing you used to ignore now haunts your memory like a lullaby you can't hum anymore. The ship rocks constantly, and your legs never quite adjust. You stumble into walls, trip over ropes, and at least once a day, you swear the floor is moving just to mess with you. Spoiler, it is. You find out quickly that privacy is a myth. Everyone's packed together below deck, breathing the same sour air, sleeping shoulder to shoulder on creaky boards or hammocks that reek of mildew. Conversations are always happening. Arguments, groans, muttered threats, dreams yelled mid-sleep. You've never heard so much snoring in your life. And the air, it smells like old cheese left in the sun, with a whisper of wet dog and a bold splash of sewage. If hell has a scent, it probably took notes from a pirate ship. You try to make friends, or at least avoid enemies. There's Peggy Joe, who lost his eye in a bar brawl, but insists it was a duel with a Spanish assassin. There's Knuckles, a hulking brute who collects other people's teeth. You don't ask why, and there's a guy called Whisper who's always smiling and never says a word. He creeps you out, but it turns out you're the weird one for not having a nickname yet. That'll come. usually after something humiliating. Meal times are, let's call them, formative. The ship's stores include salted meat that's more bone than flesh, hard-tack biscuits with bugs baked in, and something that might have been pickled cabbage before it died. There's also rum, lots of rum, not to celebrate, but to numb. You learn fast that everyone drinks not for fun, but to cope. The rations are so foul you find yourself jealous of the rats. They look healthier than most of the crew. Fresh water is rationed, and it tastes like rust and regret. Washing? Don't make everyone laugh. You're not bathing out here unless you count the occasional rainstorm, and even then, you have to fight 10 other guys for a decent soak. Your clothes haven't been dry since you got here. Your socks are a biological hazard. You start to itch in places you didn't know could itch. Welcome to the glamorous life of a seaborne outlaw. Here's a historical gem for you. Pirates actually had some of the strictest codes when it came to sharing supplies. Despite their reputations, many crews kept careful inventory and were ferocious about rationing. Wasting water could get you flogged. Stealing food? Death. On some ships, you'd be marooned, left on a rock with a pistol and a single shot, just in case starvation got boring. So no, it's not a buffet of rum and roasted pigs. It's more like the world's most dysfunctional summer camp run by angry drunks with knives. And then there's the chores. Everyone pulls their weight. That includes cleaning the deck with sand and seawater, patching sails while balancing on swaying masts, and scrubbing out the bilge, the lowest part of the ship where all the liquid waste settles. It's as pleasant as it sounds. You spend hours down there in knee-deep muck, scooping out sludge that smells like rotten despair. One guy down there with you says he saw a crab with 3 eyes. You don't know whether to believe him or to cry. Despite all this, you start to understand something strange. The ship is a world, a terrible one, but still a system. Everyone has a job, a rank, a place. The captain barks orders and gets the best food. The quartermaster handles disputes and hands out punishment. The rest of the crew follows orders and tries not to die. There's rhythm to it, a dark, sweaty rhythm that starts to worm its way into your bones. But you can't shake the loneliness. Out here, time is slippery. Days blend into nights, and you sometimes forget what month it is. There's no calendar, no real routine, just endless ocean and a horizon that refuses to come any closer. You start counting the stars at night, naming them in your head. You talk to the sea sometimes, out loud, just to hear your own voice. If the sea talks back, well, let's hope that's just sleep deprivation. Your breathing slows naturally, settling deeper into relaxation as you think about how different this world is from anything you've known. The constant motion, the endless sounds, the strange new family of criminals and survivors. Maybe there's something about being forced into a life so different that you can't even remember who you used to be. Maybe that's what happens when survival becomes the only goal. When every day is just about making it to the next one. The pirates didn't choose this because it was easy. They chose it because everything else was worse. Or they didn't choose it at all. They were pushed, pulled, dragged into a life that would break most people within days. And yet they adapted. They found ways to laugh, to bond, to create meaning in meaningless suffering. That's the strange thing about humans. We can survive almost anything, not because we're strong, but because we're stubborn, because we refuse to give up, even when giving up would be easier. Even when every morning brings fresh misery, we keep going. We find small joys. We tell stories. We name the stars. Your muscles continue to relax, sinking deeper into comfort as you appreciate the simple fact that you don't have to be that stubborn tonight. You don't have to fight for every breath, every meal, every moment of rest. You can just lie here, safe, warm, still, and let sleep come naturally, without fear, without struggle, without wondering if you'll see another dawn. By your third week aboard the pirate ship, assuming you haven't been stabbed, thrown overboard, or crushed under a collapsing mast, you start to realize that the worst part of life at sea isn't the fear. It isn't even the violence. It's the food, or what passes for food. Your body is already protesting, your stomach constantly growling like something's trying to crawl out. Every mealtime is a gamble, and the house always wins. You line up with the rest of the crew, bowl in hand, hoping for something edible. What you get instead is a ladle full of brown-grey mush, with the consistency of wet ash and a smell that could knock out a goat. You don't ask what's in it. No one does. Asking questions is a fast track to being told to go lick barnacles instead. You spoon the stuff into your mouth and try not to gag. It's salty, sour, and chewy in all the wrong ways. You chew on something crunchy and don't investigate. That way lies madness. Then there's the hardtack. It's the official bread of pirates, and a cruel joke invented by some sadistic baker back on land. These flour and water bricks have been in the barrel so long they've fossilized. You try to take a bite and nearly chip a tooth. Eventually, you learn the trick. Soak it in water or rum, then suck on it until it surrenders. Except even then, it comes with a special surprise. Maggots, little white ones, squirming happily inside the biscuit like it's a spa. Some guys pick them out. Most don't bother. Protein's protein, right? Fresh food is a fantasy. The fruits and vegetables vanished weeks ago. Meat is sorted into near jerky and stored in barrels that smell worse than the bilge. Water is rationed so carefully that bathing with it would get you stabbed. You drink beer or watered-down rum instead, which means you're constantly buzzed, mildly dehydrated, and getting scurvier by the day. Not that you know that yet. The first signs are just bleeding gums and weird bruises. The fun part comes later. To make things extra festive, you got a cook named Blacktooth who seems to take personal pride in making everything taste like regret. He's missing most of his teeth, including the ones in the back that make chewing possible. Uses a knife that looks like it was fished out of a volcano, and he seasons everything with something called ship spice, which is probably just ground up rope and sea salt. He grunts at you if you ask for seconds, and he'll throw a ladle at your head if you criticize his stew. It still might be the most stable relationship on the ship. Pirates historically had a very real problem with nutrition. Their diet was severely lacking in vitamins, especially vitamin C. Scurvy was practically a rite of passage. Sailors' gums would swell and bleed, teeth fell out, joints ached, and wounds refused to heal. In advanced cases, the flesh on their legs would blacken and rot, and yet many crews didn't even know what caused it. Some blamed sea air. Others thought it was punishment from God. You just know that your teeth feel weird and your gums itch. That can't be good. And then there's the booze. Grog, they call it. It's a mix of water, rum, and sometimes citrus if you're really lucky. Spoiler, you're not. The purpose of grog is less about enjoyment and more about killing off the bacteria in the water. It does the job. It also gets people drunk enough to forget how miserable they are, which is apparently an unofficial survival strategy. The downside? Everyone is slightly tipsy all the time. which makes climbing, rigging in high winds, let's say eventful. You find yourself craving strange things. Apples, fresh bread, cheese. You dream about cheese. Not even fancy cheese. Just a sad little wedge of anything that didn't come out of a barrel. One guy starts talking in his sleep about buttered toast. You cry a little listening to him. Butter? What even is butter anymore? Did it ever really exist? Or was it just a dream someone wrote down? Food fights aren't playful here. They're desperate. Someone gets caught hoarding dried fruit, and he ends up getting locked in the brig for a week. He didn't even know the ship had a brig. It's basically a cupboard that leaks, and the rats there have tattoos. The thief comes out thin, twitchy, and missing half an eyebrow. No one talks about it, but everyone glances at the food barrels a little more suspiciously after that. There's a strange psychological shift that happens after enough bad meals. You stop seeing food as food. It becomes fuel, a grim necessity. You eat what you must and try not to taste it. You chew without enthusiasm, like someone clocking in for a shift they hate. The joy gets sucked out of it, replaced with calculation. Will this make me sick? Will I regret this? Can I keep it down? No. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some pirates believed that eating rats could stave off starvation and sometimes scurvy. Rats, after all, ate anything, including spoilt fruit that still had traces of vitamin C. So yes, eating a rat could technically be healthier than hardtack. There are stories, possibly exaggerated, of crews chasing rats around the hold like it was sport on really desperate voyages. They'd be considered a delicacy. You haven't seen anyone eat a rat yet, but you've definitely seen some people eyeing them a little too long, as if the food itself wasn't cruel enough. The preparation methods are also delightfully medieval. There's no stove, just a firebox set on bricks in the galley. When it's safe enough to use fire at all, on stormy days, you're stuck with cold hardtack and sour beer. On good days, you might get boiled fish, but good luck finding the fish that doesn't taste like seawater and sadness. Scholars still argue about how much pirate crews actually suffered from malnutrition versus how much was exaggerated in sailor legends. Some accounts mention thriving crews full of healthy, bronzed rogues feasting on fresh seafood. Others described them as skeletal wrecks with bloated limbs and sunken eyes. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, though right now you're definitely leaning towards skeletal wreck territory. And the irony? Despite all this misery, pirates had it slightly better than Navy sailors. Royal Navy ships rationed even more tightly, and punishments were harsher. On a pirate ship, you might starve, but at least you can complain about it without getting whipped. Not that it helps. Tonight, you lie awake in the dark, your stomach doing gymnastics, trying to recall what a pear tastes like. Was it sweet? Juicy? Did it even exist? Or are you imagining it? Someone nearby farts in their sleep. Another groans. You think about rats. You try not to think about rats. And once again, you whisper into the dark, please don't sink. Your muscles relax deeper, sinking into the comfort of your bed as you think about gratitude, about how extraordinary it is to have food that doesn't fight back, water that doesn't taste like metal, bread without passengers. These aren't luxuries, they're miracles, gifts from centuries of progress, from people who refused to accept that life had to be this hard. Think about your last meal. Whatever it was, it probably didn't require courage to eat. You didn't have to negotiate with your gag reflex. Didn't have to wonder if those were supposed to move. Didn't have to choose between hunger and nausea. That's not normal in the grand sweep of human history. That's extraordinary for most of human existence. Eating was a gamble. Food spoiled. Water sickened. Hunger was constant. The pirates knew this intimately. Every meal was a reminder of how close they were to starvation, how dependent they were on luck and raids and the rare kindness of a storm that drove fish into their nets. They couldn't take food for granted, couldn't assume tomorrow would bring another meal. So they ate what they had, maggots and all, and they tried to find humor in it, tried to make jokes about the cook's questionable recipes, tried to convince themselves that the crunchy bits added texture, because the alternative was despair, was giving up, was lying down and letting the hunger win. Your breathing becomes slower now, deeper and more peaceful, as you appreciate every simple thing, every meal that tastes good, every glass of clean water, every piece of fruit that's actually fresh. These are victories, hard won over centuries, by farmers and inventors, by doctors who understood nutrition, by societies that decided hunger wasn't acceptable. The pirates didn't have any of that. So they suffered and adapted and survived on food that would make you weep. But they kept going, kept sailing, kept hoping that the next raid would bring something better. Maybe an orange, maybe a barrel of wine, maybe just hardtack that didn't fight back when you bit it. Settling deeper into rest now. Grateful for abundance, for variety, for the simple dignity of choosing what you eat, of knowing where your next meal comes from, of never having to eat a rat just to survive another day. That's freedom, real freedom, the kind the pirates never knew. Sweet dreams of full bellies and fresh bread. At first, you thought the worst part of this floating nightmare would be the food, or maybe the constant threat of death by cannonball. But no, you were wrong, so deeply, horribly wrong, because now your gums are bleeding, your breath smells like an open grave, and the left side of your jaw is pulsing like it's drumming out Morse code for kill me. You've got a toothache, and out here, that's basically the death sentence, wearing a smile. There are no dentists on a pirate ship, no sterile tools, no reclining chairs with cheerful little bibs. What you do have is a guy named Gristle, who once helped yank a nail out of someone's skull during a storm. Using nothing but a rusted hook and a bottle of rum, he's now considered the ship's surgeon. Congratulations, you're in his care. He doesn't even ask what's wrong. He just squints at your face, mutters rots deep, and starts warming a pair of iron tongs over a candle. You try to run, he grabs you by the collar and shoves you into a barrel to sit. You're given a stick to bite down on, and a small slug of rum, which does absolutely nothing except make you feel like puking and panicking at the same time. The crew gathers around like it's a puppet show. You scream before the tongs even touch you. Gristle isn't gentle. He yanks, twists, then yells, "Hold him when you flail." There's a crunch, a pop, and then pain so white-hot it feels like lightning got lodged in your skull. Tooth problems were absurdly common at sea. All that hardtack and no real hygiene meant pirates' mouths were rotting disasters. Cavities festered, gums swelled, infections spread. There are journals from the time describing black mouths and jaw worms, which sound made up but sadly aren't. The standard solution? Yank it out and hope for the best. Anesthesia, if it existed, was usually just rum and pressure applied to your chest, so you didn't flail too hard. Occasionally, people died from shock or blood loss. You're lucky. You only passed out for a bit and woke up with one less tooth and the taste of iron in your throat, but that's just the appetizer. The real horror comes a few days later when fever sets in. You're shaking, soaked in sweat, and your jaw has ballooned into a grotesque lump. The infection didn't leave. It just went deeper. Now it's creeping toward your brain, whispering sweet nothings of death and delirium. Someone says it might be blood poisoning. Someone else says you're cursed. No one offers an actual cure. You lie in your hammock, mouth swollen, drooling, and muttering to yourself. And honestly, you're kind of impressed. You made it this far. If it's not the teeth that get you, it'll be the limbs. See, pirate life is physically brutal. Every day you're pulling ropes, climbing, rigging, lifting barrels, and swinging onto decks during raids. All that action means injuries, and out here, injuries turn ugly fast. A twisted ankle? Good luck walking. A splinter in the wrong place? That could fester into an abscess the size of a crab. And then there's the big one, amputation. Lose a finger or a hand and you're still considered lucky. Lose a leg, and now you've got a nickname and a permanent limp. Assuming you live through the sawing, you get your first amputation show 2 weeks later. A cannon misfires during a practice drill and blasts a guy's arm into spaghetti. He doesn't scream at first, just stares at the dangling mass of bone and flesh like it betrayed him. Then the pain hits. Gristle is called again. This time he brings out the kit, which is just a roll of bloody cloth, a saw that smells like rot, and a jug of really strong rum. The patient is strapped down. There's no debate. If the arm stays, he dies. If it goes, he might live. That's the whole decision-making process. No second opinions. The crew gathers again. You don't want to watch, but somehow you do. A saw goes through the muscle with a wet crunching sound, and the screaming is so raw it echoes through your spine. When it's over, Gristle throws the limb overboard and wipes his hands on his pants. The man survives. Barely. He wakes up sobbing, then laughing. You're not sure which is worse. Historically, surgery at sea was a grim affair. Pirate surgeons, when they existed, were often just failed doctors or shipwrights who knew how to saw wood and figured how different can a leg be. They used hot tar to cauterize wounds and sewed you up with thread that had probably mended sails the day before. Sterilization? Never heard of her. If you didn't die from the procedure, you still had to survive infection, fever, and the fact that you were in a floating germ tank with rats chewing your bandages at night. There's an open debate among historians about how many pirates actually underwent amputations and survived. Some argue survival rates were surprisingly high given the rugged nature of pirate medicine. Others insist that any success stories were exaggerated over time to build pirate mythology. Either way, if you go under Gristle's blade, you're not betting on science. You're betting on sheer dumb luck. And luck, she's not always kind. And you've seen the guy with the wooden peg leg. He walks with a thunk and a grimace, and claims he used to be the fastest sailor on the sea. Now he spends most days polishing his leg with whale oil, and telling anyone who'll listen how he once kicked a man off a plank with the good leg. Mind you, he's one of the few who laughs about it. The others, they stay quiet, like the sea took more than just flesh. You start brushing your teeth with a bit of rag and rum, just in case. You pray you never get a splinter. You avoid Gristle like he's a ghost. You check your limbs every morning like their inventory. Everything still attached? Good. You made it another day. Tonight, as the ship groans and the sea slaps against the hull like an angry dog, you lie awake again, staring into the dark, listening to someone 3 hammocks over cough like they're dying. And you think, this can't possibly get worse. You're wrong. Of course, your breathing slows, nice and peaceful. As you think about modern medicine, about painkillers and anesthesia, about dentists who don't use rusty tongs heated over candles, about hospitals that smell like bleach instead of blood and despair. These things didn't just appear. They were fought for, invented, refined by people who saw suffering and said this isn't good enough, by doctors who studied, by patients who survived, by reformers who demanded better, and now you benefit from all of that. Every pill, every clean needle, every gentle injection, every sterile bandage, they're all gifts from the past, from people who refused to accept that pain was inevitable, that infection was fate, that losing a limb meant losing your life. Think about the last time you had a medical procedure. Any procedure, even just a checkup. You probably didn't fear for your life, didn't wonder if you'd wake up, didn't have to bite down on a stick while someone sawed through your bone. That's not normal. That's extraordinary. For most of human history, medicine was guesswork. Surgery was torture. Pain was constant and inescapable. The pirates knew this. Every injury was potentially fatal. Every infection could spread. Every toothache could become a death sentence. So they avoided doctors when they could, treated themselves with rum and prayer, and hoped their bodies were strong enough to survive. When they weren't, when the infection spread, or the wound wouldn't close, or the fever wouldn't break, they died slowly, painfully, surrounded by the sounds and smells of the ship. Their crewmates unable to do anything but watch and wait and wonder who would be next. That's the reality that haunted every pirate. Not the navy or the storms or the hunger, but the knowledge that their own bodies could betray them at any moment, that a simple cut could kill them, that there was no safety net, no backup plan, just Gristle and his saw, and a slim hope that luck would favor them one more time, settling deeper into comfort now. As you appreciate your whole, healthy body, your intact teeth, your uninfected gums, your limbs that bend and move without grinding bone, these aren't accidents, they're achievements, victories won slowly, over centuries, against ignorance and suffering. And tonight, you rest in the safety of all that progress, knowing that if something goes wrong, there are people trained to help, tools designed to heal, systems built to protect. You don't have to face Gristle and his saw. You don't have to bite down on a stick and hope. You can just sleep peacefully, gratefully, completely. Your body safe and whole and cared for. You thought pirates were lawless, wild, unhinged, and okay. Some of them absolutely are. But here's the twist. Pirate ships have rules, lots of them, more than you'd expect from a bunch of guys who can't spell authority without stabbing someone halfway through the word. They call it the code, and you better learn it fast. Because ignorance isn't an excuse when the punishment involves whips, knives, or a nice lonely island where you can die of exposure and regret. The code isn't written on fine parchment. It's not even nailed to the mast. It lives in memory, and teeth-clenched whispers pass down like ghost stories with blood at the margins. The first time you hear it, it's from the quartermaster, a scarred man with a voice like gravel and a nose that's seen too many arguments. He calls you and a few other recruits to the deck and runs through the basics like a school teacher who has already accepted your failure. Rule 1, equal shares. Not exactly what you expected from a group of self-serving criminals. But pirates hate unfair captains more than they hate the Navy. When they take a prize, gold, food, weapons, whatever, it gets divided according to rank, but even the lowest deckhand gets something. No more of that. You get paid in glory nonsense like back on merchant ships. Out here, everyone wants a cut, and God help you if you try to cheat. Rule 2, keep your gear in check. That includes weapons, clothes, and anything the crew depends on. Lose your pistol in a raid, that's 10 lashes. Let your powder get wet, 20. Forget to clean your musket. You might get tossed overboard just to think about it. The crew doesn't tolerate mistakes, because mistakes out here cost lives and loot. Rule 3, fight fair among yourselves. At least disputes are settled by duel or vote, depending on how much blood anyone's willing to spill. Some arguments get resolved with fists at dawn. Others involve knives, a circle of chanting drunk men, and someone walking away with fewer fingers than they started with. The important thing is that once it's done, it's done. Carrying a grudge longer than a few days is suspicious, and suspicious people get watched. Watched people get eliminated. The code goes on. Lights out at sunset unless it's a special occasion. No gambling during a storm. No smuggling personal treasure aboard. And definitely, absolutely, no sneaking into someone else's hammock, romantic or otherwise. That last one is especially enforced, and the crew seems unusually passionate about it. You suspect someone had a very bad experience involving a love triangle and a cannon fuse. Now, here's the weird part. These rules, they kind of make sense. Pirate crews couldn't rely on the law, so they made their own. And unlike most naval officers, captains on pirate ships could be voted out if the crew lost confidence. They held a vote and picked someone new. Usually the guy who looks scariest with his shirt off. It's rough, but weirdly democratic. Historically, this system wasn't fantasy. Real pirate codes like those of Bartholomew Roberts or Black Bart were shockingly detailed. They covered conduct, loot division, punishment, even what music could be played on board. Some codes banned gambling entirely. Others required everyone to keep their cutlasses sharp at all times. The idea was to maintain order, not out of morality, but out of sheer survival. An undisciplined crew was a dead one. But here's where it gets dicey. Enforcement of the code? That's up to the mood of the ship. One day, someone drops a dagger and gets a warning. The next, someone forgets to clean a cannon and ends up lashed to the mast with their back looking like shredded sailcloth. Justice here is more like a storm. Random, loud, and full of things flying through the air. One guy, young, maybe 17, gets caught pocketing a silver spoon after a raid. A spoon. The captain doesn't even blink. He orders the boy to be tied up and whipped 12 times in front of the whole crew. The kid doesn't cry. He just grits his teeth and takes it. Blood running down his back like spilled wine. Afterward, he's untied and given a piece of cloth to bite on. Don't do it again. Someone says, like that's going to help. You don't sleep well that night. Punishments vary wildly. Lashing's common. Flogging leaves scars that never fade, and sometimes kills. But there are worse fates. Marooning, a kind of pirate exile, is a favorite for traitors or major screw-ups. You get dropped on a deserted island with a pistol and a single shot, not enough to survive. just enough to make your own ending. If starvation, sun, and madness, don't do it first. And then there's keel hauling. You'd heard of it in drunken rumors, but figured it couldn't be real. It is a rope tied around your chest and feet. You're thrown into the water and dragged under the ship's hull. Barnacles rip skin. Water fills your lungs, if you come up at all. It's as a screaming, shredded version of yourself. If you don't, well, you become one with the sea. Luckily, it's rare. Even pirates think it's a bit much. Some historians debate whether these punishments were as frequent as the legends say. Keel hauling, for instance, might have been more of a naval thing than a pirate tradition. And marooning, while well documented, may have happened less often than the stories suggest. What's certain is that pirate crews enforced their codes fiercely, partly for control, partly out of paranoia. Trust was everything, and once it cracked, the consequences were brutal. One of the more fringe details you learn is about articles' tattoos. Some pirates actually had parts of the code inked onto their bodies, especially the rules about shares and fairness. It wasn't just for show. If someone died in battle, their tattooed rules could help settle disputes over loot, or at least give someone something to read while looting the corpse. You don't have any tattoos yet, but you're starting to think maybe one wouldn't hurt. Just something small. Maybe don't steal spoons. Oddly enough, the longer you live under the code, the more it warps your sense of justice. You start seeing things less like right or wrong and more like smart or stupid. Morality gets blurry. Survival, on the other hand, sharpens like a knife. You do what keeps you breathing and hope your name never gets called when punishment rolls around. Tonight you hear whispers about a man planning to jump ship, not during a raid, just in the middle of the night when he thinks no one's watching. He's sick of the code, sick of the food, sick of the noise. You don't know if he'll do it, but you lie awake anyway, wondering what happens if he does. Would they chase him down? Would they shoot him as he swam? Or worse, would they let him go and pretend he never existed? Either way, you're starting to realize, out here, freedom is just another word for following very specific rules, or dying horribly. And tomorrow, there will be more rules to learn, and more people failing to follow them. Your breathing becomes slower, deeper, more peaceful. As you think about structure, about how humans need rules to survive together, even in the worst circumstances, even among criminals and outcasts, the code wasn't about morality. It was about making it through another day, about creating order in chaos, about building something that worked when everything else had failed. And maybe that's the real lesson, that rules aren't always about control. Sometimes they're about survival, about saying, if we're going to make it, we need to agree on a few things. Even if those things are enforced with whips and threats, even if the consequences are brutal, they still served a purpose. They kept the ship afloat, kept the crew alive, kept the chaos from consuming everything. Think about the rules you live under, laws, social norms, unspoken agreements. Most of them you follow without thinking, without fear of punishment, because they make sense, because they protect you, because living in a functioning society requires some structure. The pirates understood this instinctively. They couldn't have civilization, couldn't have courts or police or written laws, so they created their own system, rough and brutal, but functional. It kept hundreds of violent, desperate men working together, sailing together, surviving together. That's not nothing. That's remarkable. Settling deeper into your bed now, feeling grateful for laws that don't require bloodshed to enforce, for justice systems that don't depend on mood, for rules written down instead of whispered in fear. These things didn't appear by accident. They evolved from brutal beginnings like pirate codes, through centuries of refinement, until we arrived at something better. Not perfect, but better. And tonight, you can rest knowing that the rules that govern your life aren't administered by men with whips and saws, but by systems designed to be fair, to be consistent, to protect rather than terrorize. That's progress. Real, measurable progress. From the deck of a pirate ship to the safety of your bed, from chaos to order, from terror to peace. And you can sleep soundly knowing that tomorrow won't bring a flogging for forgetting to clean your musket, won't bring marooning for taking an extra biscuit, won't bring keel-hauling for looking at someone wrong. Just another ordinary day in a world that mostly makes sense, where rules protect instead of threaten. You wake up to screaming, not panicked, not terrified, more like two drunks arguing about whose turn it is to shovel filth out of the bilge. It's still dark, probably just before dawn, and the air below deck is thick with sweat, old grog, and the unmistakable sour tang of unwashed bodies. You roll over and nearly tumble straight into a puddle of what you hope is spilled rum. Another day in paradise. There's no privacy on a pirate ship. None. Everyone sleeps, eats, pukes, and argues in the same cramped space. The smell is biblical. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your hair. You wash in salt water when you can. But that doesn't do much beyond moving the filth around in new creative patterns. There's a reason pirates don't wear white. They'd look like moldy cheese after a week. And your crewmates? Oh, they're a delight. A full cast of misfits and sociopaths, each more disturbing than the last. There's Rat-Faced Pete, who keeps dead seagulls in a crate for luck. There's Shitty Jack, who talks to his belt like it's a person. And there's Old Broady, who once pulled out his own tooth with a hook and now keeps it on a string around his neck like a trophy. You avoid them when you can, but there's nowhere to hide on this floating coffin. Eventually, someone will corner you and start rambling about sea monsters, or how the moon is plotting against them. These aren't movie pirates. They don't sing sea shanties with perfect harmonies. They bicker, they cough blood, and argue over dice games made up on the spot. Many of them are criminals who were too awful even for land. Murderers, deserters, and drunks who got kicked off other ships, and now they're your co-workers. Your very armed, very unstable co-workers. One night, you hear a thud in the dark, a fight over a missing knife. Someone ends up with a broken nose. The next morning, it's like nothing happened, except the blood's still on the floor, and one guy is now missing half an eyebrow. Conflict is constant. Fights break out over stolen rations, cheating at cards, someone snoring too loud. You learn to sleep with your boots on and your knife under your hammock. Not that it would help much. Historically, pirate crews were a mixed bag of humanity's worst impulses. You would get ex-Navy men, escaped slaves, failed farmers, and thieves from every continent. Ships like Blackbeard's Queen Anne's Revenge were said to be floating towers of Babel, with up to a dozen nationalities crammed into one rotting hull. Communication was mostly shouting and gestures, with a bit of shared profanity thrown in. If someone didn't like you, they didn't bother with gossip. They just made sure you slipped on the wet deck during the next storm. Yet somehow, despite all the madness, The crew functions. They sail the ship. They prepare for raids. They haul supplies, load cannons, and keep the ship moving. It's not order. It's survival instinct. Everyone knows that if the crew collapses, the ship sinks. So the rage and chaos get channeled into a strange sort of rhythm. You grow used to the screaming, the sudden bursts of violence, and the silent, grim camaraderie that follows. You may not like each other, but you all want to stay alive. Barely. Here's something extra weird. Some pirates actually preferred life at sea because of this chaos. They liked that nobody asked about your past, that you could be a nobody one day and the guy leading a raid the next. If you were tough, ruthless, and loud, you earned respect, regardless of where you came from. There were even cases of black and indigenous pirates being treated as equals, at least more equally than in any land-bound society at the time. Not out of kindness, mind you, but practicality. Everyone pulls rope the same way when you're trying not to die. Still, there's a fringe belief among some sailors that the ship chooses who stays, that it eats the weak and keeps the wicked. A man who can't hold his liquor, who pukes at the sight of blood, who cries during storms, he's not long for this world. The sea wants hard men, or at least ones who can fake it. And some nights, lying in your damp hammock, listening to someone cough their lungs out across the room, you wonder which one you are. One day you get paired with someone on deck duty, a guy called Elias. He's quiet, probably too smart for this life. He shows you how to tie a proper bowline and how to judge wind shifts by watching the sails flutter. He smells like old salt and bad choices, but he doesn't talk to his shoes or carry seagull bones. So you latch on. It's the closest thing to friendship you've found here. Elias tells you stories about a ship that went mad and sailed in circles until the crew starved. About a ghostly vessel that sails only in moonlight and sinks anything it touches. You don't know if he's lying or just trying to scare you, but his voice is calm and low, and you don't mind listening. He tells you the only way to survive is to be useful and be invisible. Not too good, not too lazy, just there. A face no one remembers when the knife comes out. That night you dream of being thrown overboard. Not during a storm, just casually, like someone taking out the trash. You wake up drenched in sweat, and you can't tell if the moisture came from the sea air or your own panic. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about how much internal violence actually occurred on pirate ships. Some argue that the chaos is overblown. Crews had to function. After all, others believe the tension was constant and explosive, only managed through the looming threat of violent reprisal. What's certain is that these weren't merry bands of freedom-loving rogues. They were volatile, desperate, and tightly wound, the kind of men who'd stab you for looking at their hammock too long. You've started counting the days, not because you think rescue is coming, but because you want to know how long you've lasted. It's your badge of honor now. Another day survived in this floating cage of screaming, coughing, and threats muttered through broken teeth. You've gone from hopeful to hardened, from passenger to prisoner to something else, and somewhere deep in your bones, a question forms. You whisper it at night when you're sure no one can hear. Am I one of them now? Your breathing slows, settling into peaceful rhythm. As you think about identity, about how we become the company we keep, about how survival sometimes means becoming something we never intended. The pirates didn't plan to be monsters. Most of them, they were just people pushed to extremes, people who made choices, or had choices made for them. And slowly, day by day, they became something different, something harder, something capable of violence and cruelty, but also something capable of survival. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth, that we're all capable of becoming something else, given the right circumstances, the right pressure, the right amount of desperation. We like to think we'd be different, that we'd hold on to our morals, our kindness, our humanity. But the pirates teach us otherwise. They show us that survival has a price, and that price is often paid in pieces of ourselves, in compromises we never thought we'd make, in lines we never thought we'd cross. But here's the thing, you don't have to make those choices tonight. You don't have to harden yourself against the world. Don't have to become something you're not just to survive. You can stay soft, stay kind, stay yourself, because you're safe, because the world around you, for all its flaws, doesn't demand that you become a monster, settling deeper into comfort now, grateful that you've never had to make those choices, never had to decide between your values and your life, never had to become something you're not just to see another sunrise. These aren't luxuries, they're privileges, born from stable societies, from laws that protect, from systems that provide. The pirates had none of that, so they became what they needed to be. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you can appreciate the gift of staying yourself, of living in a world where you don't have to harden, don't have to hide, don't have to become a monster just to survive another day. That's freedom, real freedom. Not the kind pirates talked about, but the kind that lets you rest easy, knowing that tomorrow you wake up still yourself, still whole, still human. And that's worth everything. You barely sleep anymore, not because the ship is loud, though it is, or because your hammock smells like a goat died in it, though it does. It's the night watch. Everyone's got to take a turn, and your turn comes more often than you'd like. You learn pretty quickly that night on a pirate ship isn't peaceful or quiet. It's teeth-gritting, nerve-grinding, eyes straining in the dark, paranoia. It's you and a flickering lantern, surrounded by the kind of blackness that makes you doubt your own shape. You're posted near the aft deck with a musket that might fire if you beg it. The lantern beside you swings with the rhythm of the waves, casting warped shadows across the rigging. The ship creaks and groans, a symphony of wood protesting its own existence. And then there's the sea itself, lapping, slapping, whispering against the hull. Sometimes it sounds like laughter. Sometimes it sounds like something breathing. You try not to think about that. Your job is simple. Look for ships and scream if you see one. That's it. Of course, you don't want to see anything, because if you do, it usually means trouble. A navy cutter, a rival pirate ship, maybe a merchant vessel if you're lucky, and even that means cannon fire, blood, and chaos. Still, watching, nothing feels like madness after a few hours. You stare so hard into the dark that you start seeing things, lights that aren't there, shapes that vanish when you blink. One night, you're sure you see a sail, a ghostly flicker on the edge of the horizon. You call it out, heart hammering. The captain looks, nothing. You get mocked for the next 2 days. Sleep deprivation is part of the job. You doze in awkward bursts between shifts, waking up unsure what century it is. One day bleeds into the next, each one as grey and salt-streaked as the last. You start forgetting things, words, names, where you put your belt. Your muscles ache, your eyelids twitch. You catch yourself talking to the mast like it's an old friend. You're not the only one. There's a guy called Henley who whispers to the sea at night, begging it to take him kindly. Another guy just stares at his hands, flexing them like he's not sure they're real anymore. Historically, pirate ships ran 24 hours a day, and the crew was split into watches. The night watch was grueling, not just for the physical strain, but the psychological toll. The dark was filled with threats, storms, reefs, surprise attacks, even supernatural fears. Pirates, like many seamen of the era, were deeply superstitious. Bad omens could be anything from a red sunrise to a bird landing on the mast. You learn these superstitions fast. The crew believes in them like gospel, and breaking one is a fast way to get yourself hated. Or worse, case in point, one night a bird lands on the bowsprit. A black seabird, slick with rain. It just sits there, staring. No one wants to touch it. Bad luck, says Whisper, who never speaks except apparently to say that the captain orders it shot. The bird explodes into feathers and blood, and for a moment everyone relaxes. That is, until the storm hits. A freak squall, lashing rain, howling wind, sails snapping like whips. You spend 6 hours soaked, frozen, clinging to ropes that could yank you into the abyss. No one says it, but you all think the same thing. The bird cursed us. You don't even question it anymore. Sleep deprivation takes a toll in strange ways. One night, you hallucinate. You see your childhood home, clear as day, floating just off the starboard side. You smell fresh bread. Hear your mother calling your name, and you reach out and almost step off the ship. Someone yanks you back. No one says anything. Hallucinations aren't rare out here. They're just not talked about. A few of the older pirates admit they've seen mermaids. Not the pretty kind. These ones are bloated, dead faces and nails like fish hooks. One swears he kissed one once. He has no lips now. You don't ask for details. There's debate among historians about just how frequent hallucinations were among pirates and sailors. Some accounts describe vivid, shared visions. Others dismiss them as exaggerations from sailors desperate to make their stories more exciting. But given the mix of bad nutrition, lack of sleep, constant fear, and potent rum, it's a wonder more pirates didn't completely lose it. Out here, reality gets slippery. And when you're alone with nothing but sea and stars, your brain fills in the blanks with whatever nightmares it can dig up. You start to understand why pirates believe in monsters. Because something about the sea feels alive. It moves under you, whispers around you, punishes you without warning. You stare into it long enough and it stares back. Elias tells you about the sea eyes, a feeling that the ocean is watching. Sometimes, he says, it looks up at you and decides whether you're worth keeping. You laugh. Then you realize he's not joking. One night, you're paired with Elias again. The two of you sit side by side, passing a bottle of grog and pretending not to be scared. He tells you about a time he saw a green light on the water. Just a flash, and then a sailor next to him was gone. No splash, no scream, just gone. Sometimes the sea takes one. He says, so it doesn't have to take all. You shiver, and it's not from the cold. You wish for sleep, but when it comes, it's not kind. You dream of sinking, gasping, clawing, screaming. of your body tumbling through black water while things slither past your ears. You wake up gasping, your hands gripping the hammock like you're still drowning. Someone nearby farts. The spell breaks, but the terror lingers. The night watch becomes a part of you. Your eyes adjust to the dark. Your hearing sharpens. You can tell who's sneaking grog from 10 feet away. You can tell when the weather's about to shift just by the tone of the creaking wood. You become, in a strange way, a creature of the night. Always alert, never rested, half real, half ghost. One of the more fringe facts you pick up is that some pirates believed their souls were tied to the stars, that if they died at sea, their spirit would rise and become part of the night sky. It's a comforting idea in a bleak, haunted sort of way. You start to look at the stars differently, not just as points of light, but maybe as people who'd had enough. Maybe someday you'll be up there too. Just a pinprick of light over a cold, endless sea. But for now, you're still here, still watching, still blinking into the black, praying that you see nothing at all. Your breathing becomes slower now, deeper and more peaceful, as you think about the gift of rest, of being able to close your eyes without fear, of sleeping through the night without standing watch, without scanning horizons, without wondering what's lurking in the dark. The pirates knew no such peace. Every night was a test, every watch a gamble. Every moment of inattention could mean death for the whole crew, so they stayed awake. They pushed through exhaustion. They fought against their own body's need for rest, because the alternative was sinking, was drowning, was becoming food for whatever waits below. And tonight, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to stand guard, don't have to stay vigilant, don't have to sacrifice your sleep for survival. You can just rest, fully, completely, without fear or responsibility. That's a luxury the pirates never knew. A gift you've inherited from a world that's moved beyond constant danger, from a time when night meant threat, to now, when night means peace. Think about how extraordinary that is, to lie down and simply sleep. No watches, no weapons, no scanning the darkness for threats. Just closing your eyes and trusting that you'll wake up safe, that nothing will happen while you're vulnerable. The pirates couldn't trust that, couldn't let their guard down, couldn't ever fully rest, because the sea never rested, and the threats never stopped. So they took turns, watching, waiting, protecting each other through the dark hours. It was exhausting. It was terrifying, but it kept them alive. Settling deeper into your bed now, feeling your muscles unclench, your mind quiet, your body finally allowed to do what it's designed to do. Rest, repair, restore. The night watch is over. Someone else has taken that burden. Generations of someone else's, who built systems and safety, who created a world where you don't have to stay awake to stay alive. And now you can sleep deeply, peacefully, gratefully, knowing that others are watching, that systems are in place, that you're protected even in your most vulnerable state. That's civilization. That's progress. That's the gift the pirates never received. Morning hits like a slap. You're only halfway through a restless nap when someone yells all hands and the deck becomes a stampede. You swing out of your hammock, groggy and sour, boots hitting the boards before your eyes are even open. The sky is dark, thick with clouds, and the wind has that sharp edge like it's looking for someone to shove off a ledge. That someone, of course, is probably going to be you. It starts slowly, a groan from the rigging, the sails snapping too hard. The ocean already never calm, takes on a new kind of rhythm, one that churns rather than rolls. The bow rises a little too high, then drops a little too fast. Somewhere deep in the ship, the timbers creak like they're complaining to the gods. That's when the rain begins. Not gentle droplets. No. This is a vertical river falling in sheets, so dense you can't see 5 feet in front of your face. And with the rain comes the real enemy, the storm. You're yelled at to help secure the sails. That means climbing. That means clinging to ropes slick with rain and salt while the ship bucks like a furious animal. Wind howls in your ears. Your hands bleed from the lines, and your boots slide against every rung of the rigging. The sea throws spray across the deck like it's trying to scrub the crew away. Every wave slams the hull, shuddering the whole ship, making it groan in its bones. You lose track of time. Could be 10 minutes or 2 hours. All you know is water, shouting and terror. Lightning cracks across the sky, closer than you've ever seen. And for a second, the entire ship glows in harsh white light. You see every crewmate in full silhouette, soaked, desperate, clinging. Then darkness returns. Worse than before. Thunder follows, deep and ragged like a monster breathing. And through it all, you hang on, fingers numb, eyes stinging, praying not even to survive, just to not fall yet. Storms at sea are the true crucible. Forget cannonballs and swords. This is the thing that tests whether you were built for this life. Historically, many pirate ships were lost not to battle, but to storms. A bad squall could splinter masts, rip sails, and roll a ship like it was made of paper. The golden age of piracy wasn't just cutlasses and treasure map. It was hurricane seasons and rogue waves. The Caribbean especially was notorious for sudden, violent tempests that sank vessels without warning. One guy near you slips. His scream is brief. He hits the deck hard, rolling, limbs bent in ways they shouldn't be. You think he's dead, but someone drags him below deck, shouting for the surgeon. You don't see him again that day. You don't ask. The storm gets worse. The captain barks orders that you barely hear. The quartermaster ties himself to the wheel. You see Elias shouting something, pointing, then vanish behind a curtain of water. For a moment, the deck is just you and the rain and the thunder. Then another wave hits, and you almost fly backward. A rope lashes your arm and saves your life. You cling to it like it's a lifeline, because it is. The water's rising now. The deck floods with every wave. Below deck it's worse. Dark, crowded, and half submerged. Barrels float like bobbing coffins. Men scramble to pump water out. But it's a losing battle. Someone starts throwing cargo overboard, trying to lighten the load. You toss 2 crates yourself, not even checking what's inside. Could be gold, could be biscuits, doesn't matter. It's dead weight now. Eventually, the storm begins to pull away, slowly, like a beast losing interest in its meal. The rain eases. The wind slackens. The waves settle from monstrous to merely miserable. The sky remains dark, but it's no longer trying to tear you in half. You collapse on the deck, coughing up salt water, soaked to the bone and shaking with exhaustion. You survived. You don't know how, but you did. For now, but the damage is everywhere. The sails are torn. 2 masts cracked. 1 crewman dead. Another missing. That last one, missing, is whispered like a curse. Not because they think he survived. No, out here, missing means taken by the sea. And if you believe in that sort of thing, and you're starting to, you don't speak his name, for fear the ocean might hear and come for you next. One of the more fringe beliefs among pirates was that storms weren't just weather. They were punishment for betrayal, for cowardice, for mocking the sea. Some even claimed they could feel when a storm was coming based on the mood of the ship, or the mood of the water. You're not sure what to believe, but it's hard to dismiss the feeling that the ocean has a mind of its own. A cruel, calculating one. Some historians say pirates were especially vulnerable to storms because their ships were lighter and faster, built for speed, not sturdiness. Others argue that pirates were skilled navigators and storm dodgers, masters of reading wind and wave. But either way, even the best ship couldn't always win against nature's wrath. Storms didn't discriminate. Rich, poor, pirate, navy, they took who they wanted. After the chaos comes the work. Hours of repairs, climbing back up to patch sails, securing cracked beams, hauling drenched supplies back into storage. No one rests. Not really. You move like ghosts, drenched and grim, eyes hollow. The man who died is wrapped in canvas and weighted with stones. There's no ceremony, just a nod, a lift, and a splash. The sea gets what it wants. Again, you finally sleep that night, if you can call it that. It's more like collapsing into unconsciousness, your body too drained to dream. You wake up hours later with your fingers still curled into fists, nails digging into your palms like you were still gripping the ship even in your sleep. And here's the kicker. No one thanks you. No one praises you for surviving, for climbing, for hauling, for not dying, because everyone else did the same, or didn't. This is just another part of the job. Another nightmare you don't get a medal for. Out here, surviving a storm doesn't make you special. It just means you're still useful. So you stagger back to your duties with the rest of the half-drowned, half-broken crew. You eat something bland and terrible. You scrub the deck, because there's always blood and grime to be cleaned. You refill the water casks. You try not to look at the empty hammocks. And as the wind picks up again and the horizon starts to ripple in that particular way, you catch yourself whispering a new kind of prayer. Not today. Not again. Please, not again. Your muscles continue to relax now, sinking deeper into comfort as you think about nature's power, about how small we really are, about how the ocean doesn't care about our plans or our hopes or our survival. It just does what it does, and we either adapt or we drown. The pirates understood this deeply. They knew they were at the mercy of forces far greater than themselves. They couldn't control the weather, couldn't predict the storms, couldn't negotiate with the wind. All they could do was prepare and hope and hold on when everything tried to shake them loose. And maybe that's a lesson worth carrying, that some things are beyond our control, that nature is powerful and indifferent, that survival sometimes comes down to holding on, to not letting go, even when every instinct screams to give up. The pirates didn't fight the storm. They endured it. They didn't try to conquer the sea. They learned to live with its moods, and when it raged, they held on and waited and hoped they'd still be there when it passed. That takes a different kind of strength. Not the strength to fight, but the strength to endure, to bend without breaking, to survive not by conquering but by adapting. Settling deeper into peaceful rest now, grateful for shelter, for roofs that don't leak, for walls that don't shake, for beds that stay level and dry. These things protect you from nature's worst, from the storms that would have destroyed you, from the cold that would have frozen you, from the wind that would have blown you away. The pirates had none of these protections, so they made do, with ropes and sails, with hope and stubbornness, with the knowledge that tomorrow they might drown. But tonight, they're still afloat, and that was enough. That had to be enough, because the storm doesn't care, the sea doesn't listen, and survival is never guaranteed. Just fought for one wave at a time, one breath at a time, one moment of holding on when everything says let go. And maybe that's the real treasure they found. Not gold or jewels, but the knowledge that they could survive, that they were strong enough, stubborn enough, resilient enough to face nature at its worst and still be standing when it passed. You don't really notice it at first. Your nose adjusts so fast you almost forget what clean air ever felt like. But then the ship docks near a port, just briefly, and someone opens a cask of actual oranges, and suddenly your whole body remembers. The citrus hits you like a memory, sharp and sweet and impossibly fresh, and that's when it finally registers. You stink. Everyone stinks. The ship stinks. Everything on this floating wreck stinks in a way that feels permanent, woven into the wood and the fabric and your very skin. It's not just the sweat or the mildew or the fact that no one's bathed in weeks. It's deeper than that. The ship smells like 1,000 accumulated sins, rancid fat, unwashed bodies, rotting food, stale grog, dried blood, and something sweetly sour that you can't identify and definitely don't want to. Every surface is sticky, every fabric greasy. You touch a rope and your hand comes away smelling like salt and dead dreams. Below deck, the air is unbreathable. You have to duck your head, stoop like you're walking into a crypt, and squeeze between hammocks swaying like meat in a butcher shop. It's hot even when it's cold, damp even when it's dry outside. You learn not to breathe through your nose. That's a rookie mistake. You breathe through your mouth, shallow and careful, and you pretend you're not inhaling 50 other people's exhalations. People try to help themselves. Barely. Some chew cloves if they can steal them. Others wipe their pits with rags soaked in vinegar, which honestly smells worse than sweat. There's one guy, bless him, who found crushed flower petal on shore leave and now tucks it behind his ear. He still smells like a corpse marinated in rum. But hey, points for effort. You've stopped noticing your own stench. That's the worst part. You can't tell anymore. Can't distinguish between your smell and the ship's smell and everyone else's smell. It's all just become the smell of survival. The smell of pirate life. Historically, ships were hygiene disasters. Fresh water was limited, soap was rare, and sanitation didn't exist. Pirates sometimes did better than Navy sailors, if only because they spent more time ashore. But that didn't stop the spread of lice, fleas, and disease. Your body is a war zone now. You itch constantly. You've scratched your leg raw more than once. One guy found a worm in his sock. Not a leech, a worm. You pray it never happens to you. You haven't properly used a toilet in private since your first day aboard. The facilities, if you can call them that, consist of a plank extended off the back of the ship, with a rope to hold onto. You crawl out there, praying the ship doesn't jolt, pants around your ankles, wind howling, sea beneath you like a giant mouth. It's terrifying. One wrong move and you're food for sharks. Sometimes you hold it for days just to avoid the trip. That leads to its own horrors. Constipation, gut pain, gas that makes everyone around you threaten murder. The smell isn't just bad, it's dangerous. Infection festers in damp wounds. Mold grows in clothes that never dry. Rats thrive below deck, feeding on crumbs and anything soft. Someone swears they saw a rat crawl into a hammock and nibble on a sleeping man's ear. The man woke up, apparently, and tried to chew the rat back. You can't verify that story, but nothing would surprise you at this point. There are recorded tales of ships being so rank that ports refused them entry. In the Caribbean, some port authorities demanded bribes just to let pirate vessels dock, partly because of their notorious reputations, and partly because of their unbearable stench. You always thought that was exaggeration. Now you know better. And here's the grossest part. Sometimes the smell saves your life. You can sniff out infection before it hits hard. You recognize the rank musk of fevered sweat, the metallic tang of blood from a fresh wound, the sour milk reek of pus. You know, when someone's dying, by the way, the air thickens around them. Your nose becomes a survival tool. Horrifying. Yes, but useful. You find yourself fantasizing about soap, just a bar of it. You imagine scrubbing your scalp until your fingernails come away clean. You imagine stepping into a bath so hot your skin turns red, and coming out smelling like something other than despair. Tonight, as the wind shifts and the smell of bilge and sweat wafts through the passage where you sleep, you lie with your arm over your face, trying not to breathe too deeply. Someone farts 2 hammocks over. Someone else coughs. The guy next to you mumbles in his sleep. Please don't rot yet. Over and over. Your breathing becomes slower now, settling into peaceful rhythm as you think about cleanliness, about dignity, about the extraordinary gift of smelling like nothing, of having skin that's clean, hair that's washed, clothes that are fresh. These aren't luxuries. They're dignity. They're health. They're the foundation of feeling human. The pirates lost that, day by day, layer by layer, until they became walking embodiments of decay, until the smell became part of their identity, part of their legend, part of what made them terrifying, but also part of what made them suffer, because beneath the stench was still a human, still someone who remembered what it felt like to be clean, who dreamed of fresh water and soap, who wanted desperately to feel normal again. And maybe that's the saddest part, not the violence or the hunger or the fear, but the slow erosion of dignity, the gradual acceptance that you'll never be clean again, that this smell is permanent, that you've become something less in the eyes of the world. Think about the simple act of showering, of standing under warm water and watching the dirt wash away, of smelling soap and shampoo, of stepping out feeling renewed, clean, human. The pirates never had that, never felt that relief, that restoration. They just accumulated filth, day after day, until they forgot what clean felt like. Settling deeper into your bed now, grateful for every small comfort, for showers and soap, for laundry and deodorant, for all the simple things that let you feel human, that let you move through the world with dignity. The pirates had none of that. So they made jokes. They wore their smell like armor. They pretended not to care. But in the quiet moments, they remembered. They remembered what it felt like to be clean. And they mourned that loss, just like they mourned everything else they'd given up for this life. And now, as you drift towards sleep, you carry their story with you. Their struggle, their resilience, their humanity buried beneath layers of filth and violence and desperation. They survived in conditions that would break most people. They endured what seemed unendurable. They found ways to live when everything around them screamed death. And in the end, that's what matters. Not the treasure they found, not the ships they sank, not the legends they became, but the fact that they survived, day after day, night after night, in a world that wanted them dead, against an ocean that didn't care if they lived. They held on. They adapted. They became something new, something harder, something that could survive the unsurvivable. Think about what that took. What inner strength, what determination, what refusal to give up, even when every single day brought fresh misery. They didn't have the comforts you have, didn't have the safety or the security or the simple dignity of cleanliness. But they kept going, kept fighting, kept hoping that maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe the next raid would bring that orange, that clean shirt, that moment of feeling human again. But tonight, as you rest in comfort and safety and cleanliness, you honor them by remembering their struggle, by appreciating what you have, by understanding how far we've come, from those rotting ships to your clean bed, from that desperate survival to your peaceful rest. The journey was long, the price was high, but we made it. Humanity made it. From the horror of pirate ships to the comfort of modern life, from chaos to order, from filth to cleanliness, from survival to thriving. And now you can sleep deeply, peacefully, gratefully, knowing that their fight is over, that you live in the world they helped build, not through their piracy, but through their persistence, their refusal to give up, their determination to see another dawn, even when every dawn brought more misery. Good night. Sleep well. Let the gentle waves of rest wash over you, carrying away all tension, all worry, all fear. You're safe now, clean, comfortable, free. Everything the pirates never had, everything they dreamed of in their darkest moments. Rest peacefully tonight, in their honor, in gratitude, in the knowledge that you've survived something they never could, the telling of their story. Sweet dreams.